Here's what's cooking on an all-new Sports Stove podcast. We're talking college football. Two crazy teams having a great start to the year. We're going to talk upcoming games this week as well. And then we'll get to the NFL preview, giving you our 6 picks, as well as power rankings and other news. And we'll close out the episode talking Major League Baseball, playoff race, vaccinations, and, of course, the judge himself. That's what's cooking on today's Sports Stove podcast.
From Belly Up Sports and the Belly Up Podcast Network, you're listening to the Sports Stove podcast with your host, Vince Stover.
Hey, good looking, what you got cooking? How's about cooking something up with me?
Welcome into an all-new edition of the Sports Stove podcast presented by Killer Jerky Company. We're talking about all kinds of great flavors of jerky, and it's available for you at killerjerkyco.com. Use the code STOVE, S-T-O-V-E, get 10% off your purchase. You can try the incredibly spicy, or you can taper it back to something more flavorful if you would like. Again, that's killerjerkyco.com. Use the code STOVE for 10% off your purchase. Welcome into a new live show. We're live here on a Wednesday night on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And, of course, available later on. We welcome our listeners that are listening to the audio version of this on podcast form. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Give us those 5-star reviews. Tell your friends about us as well. Joining me on the show, as he normally does, is my dad, Dale Stover. Dad, how you doing?
Doing good, doing good. Glad to be here this evening. Had some technical difficulties this week. I was a little worried, but got it actually corrected a few moments ago, so we're good.
And by technical difficulties, just to clarify, it wasn't Dad's fault this time. So,
yes. It wasn't. It was the cable company's fault.
Yeah, it was not age-related or generational related, anything like that.
That's right.
I wanted to clarify that for you, Dad. I know.
I do appreciate that.
The people have confidence that you know your way around a computer, but nonetheless. Let's get into football talk. We're talking college and pro football, as we do every Wednesday evening. And I wanted to start our college football talk again. We talked about them last week, but we just got to keep talking about them. The Vanderbilt Commodores continue to impress. I said it on the episode last week. I said it on local radio here as well last week, that Vanderbilt's a team you got to actually pay attention to. They're not going to win a national championship this year. They're not going to contend for the SEC title, but they're a team that's already surpassed their over-under win total for the year. And we're only 4 weeks in. So they've got a quarterback that is incredibly good. He runs the football. He can throw the football too. They've won games they needed to win. Will they win any SEC games? That I'm not sure. But I think they're at least a threat to steal a game or two throughout the rest of this season. So Vanderbilt, Dad, we make fun of them a lot. And on the other end of that spectrum, not the other end of the spectrum, same end of the spectrum, but in a different conference is Kansas. What a joke they've been. And they're sitting here playing a great football season as well. So what do we make of Vanderbilt and Kansas? Is Kansas the next SEC team to join, or what are we looking at here?
Well, I don't know if they're going to join the SEC, but Kansas, I was checking up a little bit on them this week. Of course, their coach, has had great success everywhere he has been. He had a national power in Division III down there where you went to school in Wisconsin, Whitewater, and he's done well everywhere. So it looks like Kansas. I don't know how well he'll be able to recruit and everything down the line, but boy, they have been. They've definitely been a surprise. And again, I think they're kind of like when you talk about Vanderbilt, they may have a chance to win a couple games in the conference. And, everything. They won one conference game already with West Virginia. So they're a team that cannot be taken lightly. But when you get a team like them in Vanderbilt, it's one thing. I think people say, oh, we can't take them lightly. But it's really hard to get real psyched up for them. So that's where they can be a threat. And Vanderbilt, the thing impressive about them is they're scoring points. And anytime you can score, then you've got a shot. And so very interesting with those two.
Kansas in sole possession of first place in the Big 12 with 1-0 in the conference. They beat Texas Tech to start the year, blew them out 56-10. Beat West Virginia at West Virginia in overtime, 55-42. And then they upset Houston at Houston, 48-30. So they've won 2 road games against teams that typically we wouldn't think they would win. So they're not just knocking over positional, directional schools, but they're actually winning some games. That's pretty impressive. They got Duke this week, and you got to think they can beat Duke. They're 7-point favorites this week at home against Duke before facing off against Iowa State on the first. I doubt they'll be favorites in that game. But there's a really good possibility of them going 4-0 to start the year. And like I said, there's no way in the world I saw that coming whatsoever from there. Let's talk about Vanderbilt real quick, though. You mentioned it as well. They are a team that is putting up points. I can't say they've been great necessarily this season, but a great start for them, no doubt about that. Their wins have come against Hawaii, where they won 63-10, Elon, where they won 42-31. And honestly, Dad, that Elon game, I thought, man, they gave up 31 points to Elon. They come back, they lose to Wake Forest, but for Vanderbilt standards, respectably, Wake Forest now ranked 23rd. They lost 45-25 there. And then they come back and win at Northern Illinois. Northern Illinois was the favorite in that game. And I said it over and over again, Vanderbilt will at least cover. And they did. They even came and won by 10 points. So for sure, interesting to see how it shakes out. Next up for Vanderbilt, the number 2 team in the nation, Alabama. So Vanderbilt goes to Alabama. They're 40.5-point underdogs. I mean, they're not going to – will they cover 40.5, do you think?
I don't know, because Saban's been concerned. And last week, Alabama really turned it on, a lower-ranked team. So I don't know. I think they could get inside that number. It'll be interesting to see. Again, if they can control the ball a little bit on offense. Of course, Alabama's got such a great defense. It'll be interesting. I think they could get inside that, but you never know.
What does Vanderbilt have to do on Saturday against Alabama that makes you go, man, they really got potential?
They need to stay in the game for the first half. It may get away from them there, but if the end of the first quarter is within 7 points, at halftime it's within 2 touchdowns or 10, and it looks like they're playing with them, then you'd say, wow, they could be a factor with some of these other teams. One thing that happens when you play a team like Alabama or Georgia is, but I think Vanderbilt probably is okay with this, is, people can get hurt physically. You really can get beat up. And I know sometimes when lower ranked teams play big teams like that, they do it for the finances, but it can have an effect on them. So, but if you can play with them, then it's a real boost.
Yeah, they've got Alabama this week, Ole Miss next week, Georgia the following week. So it's the gauntlet of the schedule for Vanderbilt right now. We'll see how they come out at the end. If they come out looking decent, or if they go back to their normal ways there as well. Let's talk about games to look for this weekend in college football. I've got 3 of them, and I'll start with Florida and Tennessee. Florida at Tennessee. College game day will be there as well. Both teams, Tennessee's looking really good. Florida, they got a little bit of hype, but they haven't really looked that great so far this season. They are still ranked 20th overall. They're 2-1 with their loss coming to Kentucky. Coming into the season, I thought Florida would be on the way I put it is on the rise, not this year. Felt like they're going to head the right direction, but they get beat. They got handled by Kentucky. They only lost by 10. They got handled by Kentucky. They squeak out the win at home against Utah to start the season, which was great. But other than that, not a whole lot to write home about with this Florida team. I like the quarterback Richardson, but he's yet to throw for a touchdown. He has ran for 3. But if you're the quarterback of a SEC team, you better be able to throw for touchdowns. We're three games in, and they haven't done that yet. What do you expect out of this Tennessee-Florida game?
Well, I mean, Tennessee has really gotten off to a good start, and they look really good. I don't think they'll have trouble being up for Florida, and I think the game being at Tennessee is good. So if their offense, it looks like they're running the ball. They always have receivers. They've got a quarterback. The key will be the defense. If their defense can play well and hold Florida down, I think Tennessee's going to score. And this is a game where, there's a lot of history to this, even though not with this coach. Tennessee gets up, the crowd will be absolutely crazy. And they could roll on them. If they squeak out a win, it'll still be great for Tennessee from there. And, if they were to lose, I think it'd be very disappointing. So we'll just see if they can be ready to play. And is Tennessee going to, go through the SEC? I don't know. That's probably well wishing. But Florida's a team they definitely can beat and maybe should beat at home.
Should beat for sure. And it being at home, yeah. Florida always scares me. I mean, you go back to Peyton Manning's day, Peyton couldn't beat Florida. That was the school that kept him down. Then the next year after Peyton gone, then finally T. Martin beat Florida. We won the national championship. This is a team that always gives them problems. They're 10.5-point favorites. Tennessee is at home. I think this game stays close because I'm just a doubter when it comes to Tennessee. I've not seen it consistently enough. But Hendon Hooker's had a great year. The offense has been putting up points. Maybe this is the year where they are noticeably better than Florida. But I'm going to hold out hope on that, and we'll wait and see how it shakes out. Do you have any games? I got two more, but do you have any games you're interested in for Saturday?
Well, I think the Arkansas-Texas A&M game will be very interesting. Arkansas looked like they were going to be good. They squeaked one out last week. I believe it was Missouri State. And, of course, A&M, was disappointing early and then bounced back, won a big game last week. So I think that'll be a big game in the conference for sure, and may tell us whether is A&M going to be a power here or somebody to be reckoned with in the big games, or is Arkansas going to be. So that's an interesting game.
Well, I think you said that well. I'm going to write off whichever team loses. And if Arkansas loses, they'll only have one loss. But in my opinion, if you can't beat A&M, you're not a top 10 team. And if you're A&M, I said it before, I don't trust Jimbo Fisher. I think they always lose games they should win. And with all the talk they had this year, they should be undefeated right now, and they're not. So if they lose to Arkansas, I write them off. If Arkansas loses to A&M, I write them off as a legit contender in the conference. Right now, A&M is the favorite. Of course, they're at home. They're 1.5-point favorites. So that's saying neutral site, Arkansas wins this game. So I'm going to lean towards Arkansas. I think they're going to win this game, even though it's on the road. I just think Arkansas, I don't trust A&M at all whatsoever. So I'm going to go Arkansas on that one.
Gotcha. I'll keep an eye also on the Kansas State OU game. We talked last week. I thought OU right now would be one of the teams in the top 4 in the tournament. So if that's true, then they need to handle Kansas State. When we previewed the Big 12, some people said Kansas State, would have maybe a decent season. So that could be interesting. The Ohio State-Wisconsin game, if Ohio State is what, they're supposed to be, then they will handle Wisconsin. Wisconsin is always tough. It is at home at Ohio State. And so to be interesting to see what these good teams dominate. That was really good, interesting to me last week. Georgia is just dominant, and they continued. Penn State dominated Auburn. And you're looking for that with some of the high-ranked teams.
Yep. And Michigan continues to dominate everybody they play too.
Yeah.
Clemson and Wake Forest. This is the game where Clemson has to decide if they're legit. I said going into the year that I trusted them. I thought everything is going to be fine there. They have shown that they're going to struggle offensively still, and they just can't do that. Wake Forest is a good team, but Clemson should beat them. So that game, those are the 3 games I'm interested in: Florida, Tennessee, Clemson, Wake, and Arkansas A&M. I think it's going to tell us a lot about those teams, the teams that win and the teams that lose. Those 3 games, I think, are ultimately going to be intriguing. Do you have one big upset for the week?
No, I haven't really looked at that yet.
I figured you were going to go MTSU on that one. So,
well, yeah, I'm all for MTSU upsetting Miami, but I don't know. We'll see how that goes.
how about Texas Tech over Texas? It's at Texas Tech. Texas 6.5-point favorites. There's your upset of the week right there. Texas Tech over Texas.
There you go.
Any other college football things we need to talk about before we move to the NFL?
Nope. I think one other thing last week was Oregon did really rebound. I wasn't sure that was going to be there, and so we will see. But nope, should be an interesting week again in college football.
Yes, it will. EKU, by the way, traveling to Austin Peay. And I'll keep you updated on that as you pay attention to the Sports Stove Twitter and the Sports Stove Local Hour this week drops actually in the morning dropped this morning and is available for listening now if you go back and look that up as well, previewing Austin Peay and EKU. All right, let's get to the NFL, Dad. Some news this week. Jimmy Garoppolo, the starting quarterback in San Francisco, as Trey Lance out for the season with an ankle injury. You asked me today in a conversation we had, but I'm going to ask you, what does this mean for the 49ers? Jimmy Garoppolo, are they a Super Bowl team? Are they a playoff team? Are they the division winners? How does this impact the San Francisco 49ers season?
Well, I think, again, they had Garoppolo last year, so they may be as good as they're. Again, I think they overachieved last year. I don't think they're a Super Bowl team. I don't think they'll win the division, but we will see. I mean, they lost to the Bears, but that wasn't awfully bad weather, and there was a lot of things involved there. San Francisco hasn't convinced me yet that they're a Super Bowl contender. They could make the playoffs. The NFL's been so crazy in the first 2 weeks with who's winning and losing. It's hard to call playoff teams at this point. But San Francisco hadn't convinced me that they're going to be a power in the NFC yet.
But I mean, the NFC West. I mean, the Rams at times look great. They're the Super Bowl champs, but they haven't looked as convincing yet. Arizona, I mean, who knows what's going on in Arizona. It'd be great one week and bad the next week. Probably fortunate to get out with the win this past week. And, of course, Seattle's not going to push. So I think San Francisco's in the running for the West Division right now. And Jimmy G brings them at least some consistency, and they're fortunate that they're not taking a step down, I don't think, at this point with the quarterback situation there. Let's talk about our top 5 teams. People call it the power rankings. Top 5 teams in the NFL right now. I was telling you, this isn't an easy thing to pick because to me, the first 2 teams were really easy to pick. But after that, I wasn't really sure where to go with it. So I'll give you my top 5, and then we'll get your top 5. I think number 1, they should be on everybody's list as number 1, is the Buffalo Bills. They look phenomenal. They've got a big game coming up this week against Miami. We'll talk about that in a minute. But Buffalo looks the part right now as the Super Bowl favorites for this year. So they're number 1 on my list. Kansas City, I was dead wrong on Kansas City. I thought they were going to struggle this year. So far, not the case. I got them at number 2. I'm going to put the Miami Dolphins at number 3, and I'm still not a believer in Tua. I think that they put the right things around Tua where all he has to do is throw the ball deep and somebody will run underneath it. I don't trust Tua yet either, but this team is winning, and they've got a dynamic offense with some really good receivers. So I put them number 3. I'm going to go Philadelphia number 4. This was hard for me, but they just, again, they're winning. And I give them some credit for that. There are other teams winning that I don't give credit for, though. So that brings me to number 4 on my list. I'm going to put the Packers. I watched that game on Sunday night, and I saw exactly what I wanted to see from them. They ran the ball effectively. They made things happen. The defense played well. And we've got to see it again as they were playing the Bears. But I put them at number 4. And at number 5, I put San Francisco. Again, I think they have a jolt of energy with Jimmy Garoppolo coming in. I considered the Rams. I considered the Buccaneers. But I don't like what I've seen out of Tampa so far this year, even though they're 2-0. And the Rams are probably better than San Francisco. But to my eyes, I kind of like what I'm seeing in San Francisco right now. So my top 5, Buffalo, Kansas City, Miami, Philadelphia, Green Bay, and San Fran. Who are your top 5?
Well, I've got Buffalo and Kansas City. I'll agree with you on the top two. Number 3, I have Tampa Bay. At this point, just basing on where we've been in the season, there. Number 4, I still like the Chargers, so I would put them at number 4. And then number 5 was tough. I think Green Bay could have been in there, but this is a team that lost, but I still think it's good, and that's Baltimore. So I would have Baltimore at number 5, with Green Bay being close there.
Okay, it's an interesting 5. I considered all those teams actually as well. So yeah, interesting list. And like I said, I mean, there's options. I'm sure people are disagreeing immensely with some of those teams, but for me and for you, but nonetheless, that's where we sit. All right, that brings us to our pick 6, where each week we pick 6 games. We pick against the spread. Neither Dad or I are gamblers, but to add just a little excitement to the podcast, we pick against the spread. We pick the Thursday night game, the Sunday night game, the Monday night game, and then we can each pick 3 random games that we decide to pick. We are using the lines from runyourpool.com. We have a pool there where people can pick games each week as well. So that's where we get our numbers for there. So let's start with the Thursday night game, a division AFC North battle, and it is Cleveland at home, favorited by 5.5 against Pittsburgh. Cleveland, an interesting team to start out the season, and Nick Chubb, I tried to tell everybody when we did our AFC North preview, fantasy footballers, Nick Chubb, you got to have him. I listened to me, and it worked out pretty good. So, Dad, but Pittsburgh, I think, is the better quarterback. Not everybody would agree with me on that. Which way do you go here, Cleveland and Pittsburgh?
Again, the point spread's a little high, but I'll go with Cleveland to cover because I think Cleveland is the better team, and I think they'll bounce back from last week. So I'll take Cleveland to cover at 5.5.
Division games they just play different, plain and simple. So I'm going to go Pittsburgh plus 5.5 at Cleveland. I think Cleveland squeaks this one out, but I think Pittsburgh keeps it close. So I'm going to go Pittsburgh plus 5.5. Sunday night football. It is the Denver Broncos hosting San Francisco. San Fran is a 1.5-point favorite in this game. Which way do you go on this one?
I'm going to go with Denver. I think they'll bounce back on this one, and being at home, they need to. It's been kind of a tough start, so I think they'll bounce back, and with the 1.5, they'll be okay.
I as well went with Denver. I think Russell Wilson, it's going to click at some point, and I'm going to keep picking Denver until it does. So I'm going to go Denver as well at plus 1.5 there as well. Monday Night Football, it's the Jason Garrett Bowl. He's not going to be there, but the New York Giants and the Dallas Cowboys. This is at New York. The Giants are 2.5-point favorites. Dad has yet to say a nice thing about the Cowboys all year. How you feeling with the Giants and the Cowboys? Cowboys with a huge win this past week.
Yes, it really was. On this game, I'll go with the Giants. Again, they're at home. It's hard for me to pick Dallas. And we'll see if the Giants really are a lot improved because Dallas, still got problems. Our quarterback did play well last week, so we will see. But I will definitely go with the Giants to cover the 2.5.
Yeah, the Giants are they're in prove-it mode this week against Dallas. Cooper Rush did have a good game. The Dallas defense has been good. And, I'm not afraid to pick Dallas. But today I'm going to go with the Giants as well. I got them minus 2.5. I love what the Giants are doing. I'm all in on the Giants this year to compete in the NFC East. I think they win this game. Dallas should not have won last week, and they should not win again this week. All right, now we get our 3 random games. Who's the first game that you picked?
I will take the Philadelphia-Washington game, and that's at 7.5. Philadelphia's favored. It's at Washington, so I will take Washington. I think Philadelphia will win the game, but I'm not sure by 7.5. Washington is playing better, and like you said, a division game is always tough, so I'm going to take the underdog here, Washington, in the 7.5.
Yeah, underdogs. What I understand, underdogs in division are always a good pick there. I'm going to go with another division game, not that division, though. The game I talked about earlier, Buffalo at Miami. Buffalo 5.5-point favorites, and I think Buffalo is legit. So I'm going to go Buffalo minus 5.5 at Miami, and I think Buffalo just continues to show us that they are who we think they are this year. Who's your next pick?
I'm going to take the Las Vegas Raiders over the Titans by 2.5. I think they'll cover. It is at Tennessee. Both teams really need to win this, and I think the Raiders will have too much for them. So I'm going to take the Raiders to cover against Tennessee.
And they're the favorites?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I looked at that game. It's been a day or two ago, and I almost went there too. I chose not to at the end of the day. I don't know. At some point, and Aaron Rodgers said it on the Pat McAfee show, they still have Vrabel. They still have Derrick Henry. They still have a system that's worked in the past. So eventually it's going to click, and I'm afraid it might be this week, so I stayed away from that game as well. I went, though, Baltimore, minus 3.5 at New England. New England, boy, they have not looked good to start this year. Baltimore, they're going to try to run all over New England. And then once they get down close, they can zip it off to Mark Andrews. So I like Baltimore in this game. Minus 3.5 is where I went with my fifth game of the week. That brings us to our last game, Dad. Who'd you pick?
Well, I'll get criticized for this, but I'll take Green Bay as the underdog over Tampa Bay. I think the defense will show up. And again, Tampa Bay has a great defense, so we'll see whether the offense clicks like it did last week. But at 2.5, I'll take Green Bay as the underdog.
I don't know why you'd think I'd criticize you for making a good pick, Dad. The Packers have the advantage this week. Tampa's beat up. They did not look good last week, even though they got the win. Green Bay did look good, and I think that Green Bay is going to be able to win this game. It might be close because Tampa does have a good defense, but I as well went with Green Bay plus 2.5 in that game against Tampa. I try not to pick Green Bay too often, but this week I think it was the right move to make. So I'm with you 100% there as well. Let's look at the other games going on in the NFL this week. You said it before. There's been a lot of excitement throughout this season already. A game that is one that I would have no interest in watching, but it might be really entertaining, is Houston and Chicago. Lovie Smith returns to Chicago. Chicago is a 2.5-point favorite. I think Texans could win that game. Texans have yet to win a game this season, but they tied a game and they lost a game as well. Chicago and the Texans fighting for that first overall draft pick. And one of them has to win. Well, no, not. I guess they don't when they can tie. But that game's interesting. Texans have been intriguing at the very least, right?
Yes, they have been. And I almost picked that game. And, of course, you got Lovie Smith, who was coaching the Bears for a long time. So it could be an interesting game. And I think Houston could win this one easily.
Easily?
I think they could, yes.
Wow. Okay. All right. Let's see here. You talked about Raiders and Titans. We both stayed away from Chiefs Colts. Boy, that seemed like an easy one to pick. Chiefs 5.5-point favorite. The Colts coming off getting shut out against Jacksonville. But I was scared enough. I stayed away from that one, and you didn't pick it either. What are your thoughts on how Kansas City, Indianapolis goes?
Well, I mean, Indianapolis is just, started out horrible. So I don't know. And Kansas City, like you said, is playing well. So I don't know that Indianapolis will rebound this week. We'll see.
Let's see here. Tell me your thoughts on Bills Dolphins. I don't think we asked you your opinion on it. I picked the Bills there. What's your thoughts on that game with two undefeated teams, a division game as well?
Well, Buffalo, like you said, I think is the strongest team in the league right now. The thing is, it is a division game. Mm-hmm. And so maybe Miami can rally with them there, and we'll see about Tua. I thought that was interesting, your comment about Tua. Well, he just throws it up and he's got somebody to run under it and catch it. You're too young to remember this, but people said the same thing about Terry Bradshaw. He just threw it up there. And I remember a guy one time we were at a arena game. I don't know if you remember this in Nashville. And after the game, Lynn Swan was one of the announcers. And one of the guys went up to talk to him and said, "My dad always told me you made Terry Bradshaw famous." And there was a lot of feelings about that he just threw it up, and he had stalwarts and Swan that could go get it. And if that's true, then Tua's in pretty good company.
Shout out to David Myers. Made that comment, if I remember correctly. So there you go. I'm not sure if David listens to this show, but if he should. Now he should. You're right. I mean, I just don't trust Tua yet, but he's got great wide receivers. Waddle, Tyreek Hill, both of them phenomenal. And it works. I congratulate the Miami front office for building a team that works with the quarterback they have. It worked for Tua in Alabama, and it's working for him in Miami so far. Let's see. Your Lions, Vikings. I think the Vikings are a really, really good team. You don't. The Lions have been impressive so far this year as well. Both teams 1-1. It's at Minnesota. How does this game shake out?
Well, in some ways, I think it's a big game because if Detroit goes up there and wins the game, the great feelings in Minnesota are going to start to change real quick.
Yep.
I mean, they're still riding high over beating the Packers, but if they lose to the Lions at home, that would be something. Campbell's got the Lions playing well, and it'll be interesting. I think it could be a challenge from there. So that'll be an interesting game. I'll be interested to keep an eye on that.
Jared Goff, 6 touchdowns, 1 interception. Kirk Cousins, 3 touchdowns, 3 picks. But Jefferson's the story in Minnesota. He has 15 catches, 232 yards, and 2 touchdowns there as well. A very intriguing game in the NFC North. How about the Cincinnati Bengals? 0-2, coming off their Super Bowl run last year. Their favorite on the road against the Jets this week. Jets 1-1. Joe Flacco, elite quarterback, coming up big last week. I think Cincinnati gets back on the right track this week. How do you feel about that game?
Yes, I think they'll get back on track. Like I said, some teams like Indianapolis, it's like, wow, they're in trouble. I don't know if Cincinnati is there yet. I think people still hold a lot of hope. I think they're a good team, got a lot of weapons, and they should get back on track. The Jets could be a little bit of an interesting game, but I think there's a good chance Cincinnati will get back on track.
New Orleans, Carolina. I almost picked this game in our pick 6 as well. Jameis is injured but still playing. Michael Thomas is back in a big way for New Orleans, but they've got injury issues. Alvin Kamara as well. Carolina 0-2, only a 1-point underdog in this game at home. Baker Mayfield, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. Christian McCaffrey, only 1 touchdown so far this season. And Jameis Winston, 3 touchdowns, 505 yards, but he also has the 3 interceptions as well. Leading rusher for New Orleans is Taysom Hill. 7 carries, 95 yards and a touchdown. That scares me tremendously. I didn't know which way to go with this game, Dad, so I didn't pick it. How do you feel about New Orleans at Carolina?
Well, outside of a little bit of fantasy value, because I have McCaffrey in one league, this is a game, like you say, I really have no interest in keeping up on. So I don't think it's a factor in the division at this point either way, and we'll see how it goes.
Jacksonville came up big last week against the Colts. Now they're traveling to Los Angeles to face the Chargers. I love what Jacksonville's doing. I think the Chargers are the more talented team, but I like the Jaguars in this game. I almost picked them this week. You went with the Chargers. No, you said the Chargers in your power rankings.
Yeah.
I think Jacksonville, what they've done with the draft this year, drafting young, talented defensive players, what they did offensively in free agency, what they did with hiring a good coach. I love what Jacksonville's doing. I think they are in this game to the very end. Honestly, I think Jacksonville has a chance to surprise people this week again as well. How do you feel about Jacksonville at Los Angeles?
Well, I like Jacksonville. Like you said, I'm all for them. I like Peterson, and I'm all for them. And I think they are going to have a much better year. I don't know that they will beat the Chargers. They may really stay with them. And if they do, I think that's going to be important from there. I do think the Chargers were good, and the Chargers should be able to win this. But it'd be very interesting to see, Trevor Lawrence and how things continue. And they do have a lot of young talent. So I definitely, you can see that they don't believe they're bad, and they're going to play with people, and that's important.
Justin Herbert, one of the top young quarterbacks in the league, has 613 yards, 6 touchdowns, 1 interception. Austin Eckler, fantasy bust. I tried to warn you. But nonetheless, on the other side, Jacksonville, their big free agency signing at wide receiver, Christian Kirk, leads the way, 12 catches, 195, 2 touchdowns there as well. James Robinson running well at running back as well, 130 yards and 2 touchdowns there. Trevor Lawrence over 500 yards, 3 touchdowns and 1 pick. I look forward to seeing a little bit of that game this weekend. Rams and Cardinals. Cardinals won a crazy one in overtime. I think the Rams are working their way back to their Super Bowl potential. So I think the Rams take care of Arizona in this game. They are the favorite, even though they're on the road. Any quick thoughts on Rams Cardinals?
Well, like I said, the Cardinals interesting. Tyler Murray, you've got to stop him. So the comeback was very impressive. We'll see.
Just have to survive till Kyler gets hurt. It's going to happen at some point in time. We'll see when that happens. Atlanta, Seattle. Atlanta's been an interesting team. 0-2. They've been in both their games. Seattle won the first one. I just don't think Seattle's going to win a whole lot. This game is even right now. Atlanta has to find a way to get Pitts involved. They've not done a good job with that so far this season. They have got Drake London involved, which has been a positive thing for them as well. Seattle has to find a way to run the football where they've not had a whole lot of success this year. How are you feeling about these teams, Atlanta, Seattle?
I think Atlanta can win this and can get their first win this week, and they have done better than expected. So we'll see, and I agree. I don't think Seattle will have a good year.
Last week we did in or out with the 0-2 teams, I believe, correct? And so this week I want to do in or out with the undefeated teams with you and kind of get your thoughts on these. So let's run through these quickly. Miami, in or out?
I'm in on them having a good year, so I think they're going to be tough.
I still think they're a level behind Buffalo. And I'm not a Tua fan. I made that clear. But I'm in on Miami as well. They're going to be entertaining, and I think they're going to be number 2 in the division. And I think they're a playoff team, and I think they're dangerous because of the athletes they have as well. So I'm in on Miami. Buffalo, we're both in on Buffalo, right?
Yeah, yes.
Kansas City. Again, this is a team I was kind of out on coming into the season, and already a couple weeks in admitting I was wrong. I'm all in on Kansas City. How about you?
Yeah, I'm in on them again. I think Mahomes, is going to show that, he can play with different wide receivers. And, I'm in on them.
And this is where it gets interesting. Philadelphia, 2-0. Are you confident? Are you in or are you out on Philadelphia?
I'm in on Philadelphia. I'm confident. Again, I think Hurts is doing what he needs to do, and they've got some talent. And at this point, I'd be in on them, especially in the division they're in.
Yeah, I think you said it, doing what he needs to do. 70% completion percentage, 576 yards, and then let's see here, only 1 touchdown pass, 1 interception as well. So all the touchdowns are really coming on the ground. Sanders has 1. Hurts has 3. Scott has 1, and Gainwell has 1. They're, I don't know. I'm intrigued by them still. At this point, I'll say I'm in. I'm not fully confident, I guess, so maybe I'm not in, but I'm not out either. So I'll go with in with Philadelphia. New York Football Giants, 2-0. Daniel Jones. Odell Beckham Jr. this week said he's willing to go back to the Giants if they bench or trade Daniel Jones. I don't think that's happening. Are you in or out on the 2-0 Giants?
I mean, I'm glad they're doing well, but I'm out on them. I don't think they're going to last and won't be a big factor in the division at this stage. Again, I don't think Daniel Jones is the guy, and I don't think they have as much talent as probably the other teams in their division.
I'm all in on Brian Daboll and the Giants. I think Daniel Jones is not that far behind Jalen Hurts. I don't think he's that far behind Carson Wentz. And I think he's ahead of Cooper Rush. So I like what the Giants are doing. I don't think they're a Super Bowl team, but I know they're headed in the right direction. In Brian Daboll, I trust, and I'm not a Giants fan. So there you go. One more 2-0 team is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Are you in or are you out on Tampa Bay?
I'm out because I don't think they're going to end up as good as everybody thinks that they're going to. Now, again, their division is weak, so that's going to help them from there. But we'll see this week with Green Bay, but I think they could really struggle in the big games, and that would hurt them. But we'll see.
They will win the division, but I am out on Tampa Bay as well. They are not what so many people think that they are. I think Brady, we're starting to see not a steep decline, but I think we're starting to see the decline of Tom Brady as well. And so, yeah, I'm out on them also. Any other NFL topics you want to cover?
No, well, I'm sure this was just an oversight, but on our pick six, what was the results last week on that?
Yes, very good. Very good. We were 3-3 in week one. Dad was 4-2 last week. I was 2-4. So Dad now currently leads the pick six challenge, 77-5. And then I'm the opposite of that. I'm 5-7 on the week. So yes, that was legitimately an oversight. I apologize, Dad. Kudos to you. So we'll see how it shakes out this week as well. As always, feel free to go on Twitter or Instagram at Sports Stove and leave your 6 picks. Pick the Thursday, the Sunday, and the Monday night games, and then 3 games of your choice the rest of Sunday as well. Throw them in the comment sections and let us know who you pick and see if you can keep up with Dad and myself. Let's go to Major League Baseball to close out the episode. Aaron Judge continuing to climb. He's in the 60 home run marker the last time I checked. I didn't check tonight to see where he's at. He's making history one way or the other, right? And Aaron Judge is legit, hopefully not on drugs, and hopefully all's good with this. But he's bringing that entertainment value. Home runs are entertaining for Major League Baseball.
Yes, yeah, and he's a great home run hitter, and if I've kept up with it right, they're just talking about his home runs, but he has a chance to win the Triple Crown, and
Correct.
that used to be a big thing. It's kind of funny, but that's not being mentioned now. But you don't get a lot of home run hitters that can hit for average. RBIs, yes, but he would establish himself as quite the player. And have quite the year if he could win the Triple Crown and break the home run record.
Great point. And I don't even think he has to break the record. Just being in that conversation is good enough for that aspect of it, I think, at the very least. Let's look at the wild card situation, the playoff situation. Yankees, Houston, and Cleveland seem to have their divisions pretty well under control. So that brings us to the wild card race, which is pretty well set also. Toronto, Tampa, and Seattle. We've said it for a while now. I think the AL, the seedings might change, but the AL 6, that's pretty well set, right?
Yes, yeah, I think it is, and I think that'll be really good playoffs because I'd like to see some of the wild card teams. Can Seattle surprise and make a move? Can Tampa? And so we'll see.
3 National League teams have already clinched their spot in the playoffs: the New York Mets, the Atlanta Braves, and the Los Angeles Dodgers. St. Louis, has not technically clinched the Central, but they're 8 games up on the Brewers. They will win the Central. So let's go back to the National League East. Mets, Atlanta. Atlanta's 1 game back. I said earlier in the year that I think the Mets will pull it off. I'm going to stick with it, but it's a close one. Who do you think wins? Where are you at now with the AL East?
Well, I think Atlanta will win, but again, I don't know that it really matters. They're both going to be factors in the playoffs. It's like last year the Giants won, but they didn't get past the Dodgers in the playoffs, and that could be what happens in the East there.
Wild card right now, it's Atlanta, San Diego, and Philadelphia. And, Dad, there is very few things more fun than watching Philadelphia fans in great anger. Philadelphia now the last team in. Milwaukee 2 games back on Philadelphia. Can Milwaukee make it in? Are they going to surpass Philly or San Diego? San Diego is a game and a half up on Philadelphia right now. I mean, do the Brewers have any chance of making it in?
Well, I think they have a chance, so we'll see. They've got a couple of weeks left, so it'll come down to probably come down to the end on that. And yeah, I know some Philly fans, and yeah, Philly fans do get angry, so that is interesting.
Yeah. Other than Chicago fans, I love watching a Philly fan suffer. The Brewers, they've got a 4-game road trip to Cincinnati. Then they've got 2 games at home against St. Louis. Then they're at home for the Marlins, 4 games against the Marlins at home, and they close out the season at home, 3 games against the Diamondbacks. So they've got a pretty soft schedule here to close out things for the season. They still have to win those games, though, and they haven't always been able to do that. For Philadelphia, they are going to be home for the Braves. They got a 4-game series against the Braves. Then they travel to Chicago for 3 games against the Cubs. Then they travel to D.C. As they face off against the Nationals for 4 games. And they close out the year on the road in Houston against the Astros. So not an easy schedule for Philadelphia coming down the stretch. And right now they're only 2 games up on the Brewers. I think if the Brewers play the way they're supposed to play, I think they make it in still. I don't think they go far, but I think they make it into the playoffs.
Yeah, if you look at the schedules, they definitely have the advantage. So we'll see.
And I don't know there's a whole lot of teams that want to face Brandon Woodruff and Corbin Burns in the playoffs. But, again, the Brewers have been up and down all season, so who knows. They would end up having to face probably the Dodgers. Well, no, they wouldn't play the Dodgers in the first round. So I don't know who they'd face off against. Atlanta or New York. But anyways, craziness, absolute craziness. Okay, baseball's coming down to it. Oh, Canada lift their vaccination rules. So now unvaccinated players can go to Canada and play in the playoffs. It does not affect anything there, which is great to see. Thank you, Canada, for finally getting on board and realizing it's safe to play baseball. So there you go. Canada, thank you.
And I assume that rule for Canada is for all sports. That'll affect hockey the same way.
I think it's for everybody. I don't think it's just a sports rule the way I understand it. So, yeah, I think it's clear for everybody to be a little bit more free at the very least. They might still have some regulations and things, but they can get into the country and they can play their games. So that's a good thing. Good thing there. All right. We're coming up on a football weekend, Thursday night football, Friday night high school football, Saturday college football, and Sunday back to the NFL as well. We'll be back here next Wednesday night to review and preview what's going on in the football weekend and around the world of sports as well. I want to remind people to go to killerjerkyco.com, use the code STOVE, get 10% off your purchase, and try out some really killer jerky. I think you'll enjoy it. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at SportsStove for the latest opinions of this host at the very least there. Dad, any closing thoughts?
No, I think that's it. We could talk a little hockey, but you never like to do that, so we won't do that right now. So
I am not in the correct mental space to talk about rookie camp at hockey right now. We'll get some hockey talk in at some point in time, but not tonight. Robert Sarver selling his teams. That's a whole nother topic. We're not going to dive into it right now. But that's interesting. Dad, if you want to go in, I'll go 50-50 with you. We'll buy the Suns. We can at least throw an offer at them. We'll see see how that works. We can talk about it off air. Okay, friends, thanks for tuning in to tonight's edition of the Sports Stove Podcast. We'll be back next week. Until next time, we'll see you around the Sports Stove.